Hey, good afternoon to you. 506 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up this hour, Christian Heiens joins us at 5:30. He's a political analyst, election modeler. He's very good at what he does. We'll take a look at the numbers in the Commonwealth of Virginia and the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Both Commonwealths. How many Commonwealths are they? Well, they both are. And you can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Elon Musk is making the left angry right now because he's announced over the weekend that if all these people are signing his petition. It's a very simple petition. Only registered voters can participate. And when you sign it, the petition says that you support the First and the Second Amendments. That's all you have to sign on to. It doesn't say you have to vote for somebody. It doesn't have to say you have to vote against anybody. It's just, I support the First and Second Amendments. I pledge. Perfect. Speech and guns. Religion and guns. I support these amendments. And which, by the way, everyone should be able to sign, but it's weirdly only Republicans are interested in supporting those two amendments. Have you noticed? Not really a Democrat thing, and that's probably by design. And obviously, if you're making it so that only registered voters can sign the petition, that helps induce people to register so they can sign the petition. And he's been giving out money to people, I guess. I don't know if the checks have been distributed yet, but he's been telling people that if you get people to register to vote in swing states, if you get people to sign the petition in swing states, for every signature you get from a registered voter in a swing state, he will give you $47. That's huge. I mean, imagine if you're in a Pennsylvania social group and you all look around at each other. How many registered voters we got here? 10 of us? That's awesome. Hey, Bill, you registered to vote? I'm not. Register, dude. If you get registered, we'll get you to sign this thing. That's another $47. We could throw a party, Now, in Biden's America, it won't be a very long-lasting party, but you'll have some sort of party. You'll be able to do it. So $47 a person. And over the weekend, Musk upped the ante. He announced that he's going to be giving away $1 million a day to a random person who signs the petition. $1 million. Listen to Elon Musk.
So I have a surprise for you, which is that we're going to be awarding $1 million to randomly to people who have signed the petition every day from now until the election. So, one of the challenges we're having is how do we get people to know about this petition? Because the legacy media won't report on it. Not everyone's on X. So I figure, how do we get people to know about it? Well, this news, I think, is going to really fly.
And so we started right away. Right after that statement on stage in Pennsylvania, he literally announced the name of a guy who was in the crowd, and the guy walked up on stage and was handed a gigantic $1 million check. He was losing his mind. Can you imagine? You go to this event with Elon Musk, you sign the petition, and all of a sudden he's announcing, I'm giving you $1 million. What a world. What a world. That guy just got $1 million. Now, that's pretty public. I'd be careful about that. You know what happens when these lottery winners get announced that they've got all this money. All of a sudden, the vultures come flying in. They're coming after him. So hope he's got a good financial advisor now. But $1 million instantly. That's a big deal. And Elon Musk has already done it twice this weekend. He did one in Harrisburg, one in Pittsburgh. So in Pennsylvania, it's just been such a big hit. So they're giving away $1 million checks a day. And how's the left feeling about all this? How's the left? They're angry. In fact, they're so angry, they want to throw Elon Musk in prison. Listen to Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro instantly start floating, maybe it's time we arrest Elon. Here he is on Meet the Press.
Governor, let me ask you about a development we learned about overnight. Elon Musk says he will be giving away $1 million every day to random voters who sign his super PAC's petition. You are a former attorney general. Is this legal?
I think there are real questions with how he is spending money in this race, how the dark...
Notice he didn't start with a law or anything. There are real questions about how he's spending money in this race.
Money is flowing, not just into Pennsylvania, but apparently now into the pockets of Pennsylvanians. That is deeply concerning. Look, Musk...
The governor of Pennsylvania does not want Pennsylvanians to receive money.
Obviously has a right to be able to express his views. He's made it very, very clear that he supports Donald Trump. I don't, obviously we have a difference of opinion. I don't deny him that right. But when you start flowing this kind of money into politics, I think it raises serious questions.
It's not into politics, actually. He's giving $1 million to random individual Pennsylvanians. He's not taking control of entire federal agencies. He's not buying off United States senators. He's not doing what everybody else in Washington seems to do. He's saying, I'll give you $1 million just for being a registered voter who signed my petition to uphold the First and Second Amendments.
That folks may want to take a look at.
So you think it might not be legal, yes or no?
I think it's something that law enforcement could take a look at. I'm not the attorney general anymore of Pennsylvania. I'm the governor.
I don't know the law anymore. I forgot it.
But it does raise some serious questions.
Yeah, so he's trying to kick up some dirt and say Elon Musk may be doing something illegal here. Axios tries to pick up the ball today. They wrote, the federal law makes it illegal for anyone who, quote, pays or offers to pay or accepts payment either for registration to vote or for voting. Those who violate the law can be fined $10,000 and imprisoned for 5 years, Axios writes today. Notice the language on that law. Pays or offers to pay or accepts payments either for registration to vote or for voting. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but just as long as we're going to be a stickler for the facts, Elon is awarding $1 million to a random person who doesn't register, not that, doesn't vote, not that, who signs his petition. That's the arrangement. Now, I'm not a lawyer. I was never the attorney general of Pennsylvania. But you don't think Elon Musk thought this through? You don't think one of the richest people on the entire planet with probably the most expensive lawyers that money can afford didn't think through the consequences of daring to say that the First and Second Amendment are worth defending? So that's Elon. Now, Elon, on these stages, he's been doing Q&A, which is great. And he's talked a lot about why he's involved in politics at all. Let me start here. Elon says that the stakes are so sky high. And this guy knows what it means to be sky high. He puts rockets into space.
I like making products people love. And that's what I normally like doing. And I actually don't like politics at all. I hate politics. but the stakes are so high here that I have had no choice but to take a stand. So it's not something I want to do. And
how could a guy with his schedule want to do politics? You know, why would you want to go off on this side mission? The guy's building rocket ships and cars and trying to build tunnels that deliver humans at hyperspeed between cities. This is the kind of thinking. He's on a different plane than the rest of us. Let's just be honest. And he's engaged in politics right now because he feels like he has no choice. And he's experienced firsthand what it means to deal with our government. In fact, he told this story, which in some ways is really funny, but in other ways it's like, boy, the government really is a disaster, isn't it? He told a story about how the feds forced his rocket ship company to assess the likeliness that a falling rocket from SpaceX might hit a shark in the ocean. This is the kind of nonsense, taxpayer-funded nonsense, SpaceX money-wasting nonsense that the federal government is undertaking. Listen to Elon tell the story.
I mean, I got a bunch of sort of nutty stories, you know. Some of them are, I guess, kind of funny. There's, you know, we had to do this, SpaceX had to do the study to see if Starship would hit a shark. And I'm like, it's a big ocean, you know. There's a lot of sharks. It's not impossible, but it's very unlikely. And said, well, you have to, you know, this is, I think, from National Marine Fisheries, one of the, you know, NIMF it's called. You know, they were like, well, you have to do the study on whether you're going to hit a shark. We're like, what? And then we said, okay, fine, we'll do the analysis. And then, well, can you give us the shark data? They're like, no, we can't give you the shark data. Well, like, okay, well, then we're in a bit of a quandary. How do we solve this this shark probability issue? And they said, well, we could give it to our Western division, but we don't trust them. And I'm like, am I in a comedy sketch here? And they're worried about the shark density data, like the people who hunt sharks for shark fins somehow getting their hands on the shark data. And so eventually, I think we got the data, and we could run the analysis to say, like, yeah, the sharks are going to be fine. But they wouldn't let us proceed with launch until we did this crazy shark data. And then we thought, okay, now we're done. And they said, but what about whales? I'm like, when you look at a picture of the Pacific, what percentage of the surface area of the Pacific do you see as whale? Because I look at a picture, I don't see any, it's like, you can't, where's a whale?
He had a good line. He said, you know, if you are a whale and you get hit by a rocket, honestly, you had it coming. there's like the odds of a whale being hit by a falling rocket are so astronomically low that that was fate. That was God was sending a message. If you get hit by a rocket and you're a whale, I'm sorry. it was your time to go. Wild. Absolutely wild. All right. Let us see here. I've got a lot going on. I've got Connor calling in now from Huntsville, I presume Alabama, line 6. Connor, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Yes, sir. Good show, Vince.
Thank you.
I think that one reason that the Democrats are going so crazy now is if the early voting numbers pan out and people are going all the way down the ballot, you're going to have trouble finding a Democrat dog catcher.
Yeah, so, in other words, what we're witnessing is a panic among Democrats seeing the writing on the wall insofar as the voters are concerned.
Yeah, I think so. And one thing I really haven't heard talked about enough, I think Mark Levin talks about it some, is that you want to nip these people in the bud at the school board, the county commission, state representatives, because that's where these people get their foothold.
That's right. They get a little taste of power, and then they just get worse and worse throughout their disastrous political career.
And they work up the system.
Yeah.
You have to cut them off at the feet.
Yep.
Really.
Yep. I agree with you, Connor. It kind of goes to what Elon Musk was just saying. Is like I think a lot of conservatives, they busy themselves with their work and their families, and they take care of those things, and their faith, they take care of those things. But oftentimes, through the years, I think a lot of conservatives have kind of sat out government, and they've left it to others to handle. And sometimes it's, Republican-led states where things are getting out of control, and you get these like squishy Republican governors and senators who are in these very safe red states, and actually they're not the right people for the job. And the same is true in places where Democrats dominate everything, and Republicans have been kind of meek in terms of engaging in the political system there, and have ceded the terrain, have basically forfeited it, and said, okay, you can have it. You're interested in obsessing over this, go for it. Well, all of that kind of laissez-faire attitude towards, well, whatever, that's your thing. I'm focused on my business and my family and my church. Well, it hasn't worked out, has it? Which is why there's a calling for good Americans to step up and to add this to their lists, because someone needs to. Got to fix this thing. And it's the people who run healthy businesses and healthy families and participate in healthy church communities who are best positioned to make healthy contributions to politics. And, of course, that also means you're going to be on the receiving end of a very vicious political system that Democrats have too much control of right now. It's 521. Oh, that Chris. Not an optimist. Let us see here. I've got coming. Bryant calling in from Harper's Ferry now, line 3. Bryant, thank you for waiting. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince. Thanks for taking my call.
Yes, sir.
I want to circle back to the cackling Cammy McDonald's gate thing.
Yes.
If she actually did work at McDonald's, wouldn't the IRS have a record of her tax filing?
Yeah, that's a good question. Does the IRS, do they delete tax filings after a certain number of years? I wonder how long the IRS keeps tax filings on hand. But you would think that they do that. But somebody's got a record somewhere. Bryant, here's the issue. Of course, they wouldn't have the record because it never actually happened. I don't think I think we can all agree she never actually worked at McDonald's. This is one of the most important discoveries you could possibly make, right? If you're the Kamala campaign, you'd probably marshal every resource right now in order to dunk on Trump. Oh, yeah, she worked at McDonald's. They've given us nothing, Bryant.
Yeah, they should want to prove that she did.
Yeah, I would think. But they're not doing it. They're not doing it. Don't be surprised if you and I get an artificial intelligence photo of Kamala Harris serving fries at McDonald's soon. I think that'll be the way that they get out of this. Thank you, Brian. Hey, did you see, speaking of AI photos in politics, there is, I guess President Trump posted an image of himself wearing a Pittsburgh Steelers uniform and full pads. It's AI, obviously. It's an AI photo. Newsweek ran an entire article about how Trump might have just posted an AI photo of himself as a player for the Pittsburgh Steelers. These people. God. I love that they fall for it so frequently. It does make life more amusing. Hey, coming up, what is happening in the early vote? We're trying to suss out some of the trends here. Christian Heiens is an expert susser-outer. He's a political analyst, election modeler. He'll join us next to talk about what the heck is happening in Virginia. Is Trump even capable of winning in the Commonwealth? And what about Pennsylvania, the state that everybody's watching? Christian's watching it. He's got some thoughts. That's next. Hey, good afternoon. 5:35 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL. Where, as always, we're making sense of the news. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Of course, for months now, I've been talking about the importance of Virginia and the chances of possibly seeing a Trump victory and, of course, down-ticket success for Republicans all across the Commonwealth. But if that's going to happen, it's going to take a lot of focused energy from conservatives in the Commonwealth. The guy who follows it really closely for a living is my next guest. Christian Heiens is here. He's a political analyst and an election modeler. He's also the co-host of the Making the Argument podcast. Christian, good to have you back with us, sir.
Thanks for having me on.
I know that so far through early voting, you've been encouraged by much of the turnout among Republicans in Virginia. But Corey, my producer, tells me that over the weekend there was a bit of a setback. Tell us what's going on.
Yeah, so since you and I last talked about this, Republicans have really been surging with early voting. I mean, we're at a point where up until this weekend and arguably even beyond it, Republicans were in a point where if Donald Trump won the same amount of election day votes as a percentage as Governor Glenn Youngkin did in 2021, he actually would win Virginia outright, which is kind of shocking considering that this is a state that voted for Joe Biden by 10 points. But as you brought up and hinted at, over the last 3 days, really since the weekend, Democrats have picked up a lot of ground here. I mean, they've probably picked up about 1 to 2 points or a point and a half in the total early vote. Part of this is driven by the fact that Northern Virginia has opened up a lot of new satellite polling locations in order to allow for more people to vote early, and obviously Northern Virginia leans heavily Democrat. So they've eaten into a lot of the margins that you've seen in Southside. The other thing is that on a congressional basis, the 11th district, which is mostly Fairfax County, has actually now started to outvote some Republican districts down in the Shenandoah Valley, Southwest, Southside, and Central Virginia. So Democrats have, this is definitely a case of the Empire Strikes Back, but make no mistake, though, that Republicans are definitely in a stronger position still than when you and I last talked about this.
Do you think there's any sort of explanation for why Democrats might be showing up at this moment? Is it just in Northern Virginia, just that the satellite locations have come online, so that's why we're seeing that energy, or is there something else going on?
Well, if anything, they're actually showing up late. This is a very late rally for them. They should have been doing this weeks ago. I mean, to give you an idea, Republicans are in a stronger position today when it comes to early voting than in any election that Virginia's seen since COVID. And, your listeners probably already know that, early voting really wasn't a huge factor in Virginia before 2020. So
Right.
we're already in uncharted waters. It's true that they're making up ground, and I think it's in large part because of the dynamics of where they're located and what satellite locations have opened up. But at the same time, even with these gains, we're in a solid spot.
Christian, forgive me if I've asked you this before, but I'm trying to understand what you consider a Democrat vote versus what you consider a Republican vote. Is it just basically like traditionally Republican districts? You just consider those all basically Republican votes, and traditionally Democrat districts, you say those are all Democrats? Am I being overly simplistic?
No, it's definitely not built around congressional districts. There's plenty of blue voters in the 5th district, for example, right? Because you've got Charlottesville and Albemarle there. And there's plenty of Republican voters in the 7th, where I live, because it's not just Prince William. It goes all the way out to Culpeper and Orange and Green.
Right.
The way that it works is that you assign a probability score to a voter based on a variety of factors. When you and I last spoke, I talked about how, that can be demographics, that can be region, that can be partisan voting habits and primaries. And so what you do is you take that probability score and then you assign it to a voter and you say this person has a 60 or 70 or 80% chance of being a Democrat or Republican. And when you apply that out on a congressional basis or a county basis or a statewide basis, that's how you get the partisan breakdown.
Okay. So, but it is possible that that your measurement maybe could miss, that there may be some overzealous, say, Republican enthusiasm in Fairfax County. You're not quite sure on what the actual partisan breakdown in that county would be.
So, yes, that's definitely correct that the model's not going to be 100% accurate. But, what's really interesting is the model is almost certainly more favorable to Democrats than what the final election results will be. And the reason why is because the breakdown of swing voters, these are individuals that, it doesn't matter how you slice it and dice it, you just can't figure out if they're going to be a Democrat or Republican. Democrats always win swing voters when it comes to early voting because they win the early vote. But the model that I'm running right now is almost certainly overestimating the Democrat gains with swing voters compared to what's actually going to happen this year.
Demographic modeling must be really challenging to do, especially in this election, because it seems like, that there are all sorts of new coalitions being formed. President Trump has succeeded in bringing over certainly a lot of Hispanic voters, a lot of Black voters, a lot of Asian voters, Vietnamese voters. And I can't tell you how many immigrants I've met in Virginia who are all Trump supporters. Does it make it challenging to figure out, what demographic data to rely on when you make a model like this?
Yeah, and that goes into what I was saying just a minute ago about how, between you and I guess your listeners, almost certainly the model that I'm running this year, which I've put a lot of work into, I know for a fact that it's overstating Democrats. And so when I'm putting out these tweets on a daily basis showing that Democrats are usually leading about almost 60-40, just under it in the early vote, that is actually probably indicative of the fact that they're more likely getting 57-58%, not 59-60%.
Okay, so as of today, I know you like to try and figure out how many points the difference will be. As of today, how do you assess Election Day? What are you expecting right now?
So we're currently tracking for my best estimate, at least right now, is probably 1.2 to 1.5 million early votes. We could assume that turnout is going to be in the high 60s, low 70% statewide. So that probably means that you're going to see anywhere from 4 million to 4.5 million. It's probably going to be just a little bit under 4.5 million votes that are cast in total. So that means that, in terms of percentage breakdown, you're looking at anywhere from 33 to 40% of all votes being cast early, and then the rest would be cast on Election Day. Now, this is going to mean that you're going to see a much smaller gap between the Democrat advantage in the early vote and the Republican advantage on Election Day. In 2020, Trump won Election Day something like 62-38. He's not going to win it by that much. But honestly, we're at a point right now where even if Trump just breaks even on Election Day, you're looking at a scenario where Kamala Harris is probably going to end up leading in Virginia by less than 6 points. And if she's only winning Virginia by 6 points, then that spells real trouble for her in these other swing states like Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, et cetera.
Okay, finally, the phrase that I hear election observers use a lot is cannibalizing. To what extent are Republicans cannibalizing their election day vote by having everybody vote early? In other words, like the numbers are going to be smaller, as you just pointed out, among Republican voters. Do you have a sense of how many Republicans are still holding on to vote only on Election Day?
So this is a really interesting thing that I've heard people bring up on both sides, right? Either as a warning or as some sort of cope in order to explain what's going on with early voting. And, you know, it was a few days ago, I actually dug into the data in detail, and I was like, okay, let me grant the Democrats' argument for them that Republicans are cannibalizing their Election Day vote. If that's true, then if we remove everybody from the voting pool that has cast a vote early so far, but who also showed up and voted on Election Day in 2020, which is a heavily pro-Trump crowd, right? 62-38. If you remove those individuals, then you should theoretically see an early vote breakdown that's in line with 2020, because Republicans are supposedly cannibalizing their early Election Day, or their Election Day vote into early voting. So I removed all those people. I ran all those numbers. And what I ended up finding was incredible. I found that Harris is still, even after you do that math in her favor, she's still trailing Joe Biden's actual election, early vote margins by 7.5 points. And so if anybody is cannibalizing their Election Day vote, it's actually Democrats that are doing it right now, not Republicans.
Wow, that's a fascinating piece of data. All right, so we'll keep tracking Virginia, but I guess the key indicators and the final question on Virginia that you're looking forward is whether or not we see more energy over these next 2 weeks in this early vote.
Oh, yeah, I think you're going to see both sides try to finish strong and put themselves in the strongest possible position on Election Day. For Democrats, they know that if they don't put this thing away in the next 10 days or so, they're in real trouble. They're almost certainly going to still win Virginia because Joe Biden won it by 10 points. But they also know that if they're only winning Virginia by 5 to 7, again, that spells disaster for them in states like Pennsylvania and North Carolina and Georgia and some of these other swing states. So I think really love a lot of enthusiasm.
I would love to upset them, though. Wouldn't it be the best? And also, it could help us have a really easy election night. If Virginia is on the map for Trump, I think by election night we know who's president.
Yeah, if Trump wins Virginia, it's a decisive mandate for him to govern. I mean, he's winning every other swing state, and this is it changes the electoral dynamics in a permanent way. So, no, I would love to see it happen. But you know what? Yeah. Even if it doesn't happen, if he just comes close, that's probably going to be good enough to get him across the finish line nationwide.
Because what you're talking about is there's a sentiment that's not just being felt in Virginia, but all across the country that's going to lead to whatever outcome we experience. Tell me about Pennsylvania. What are you watching when it comes to Pennsylvania? Everybody I talk to says Pennsylvania is the key state. There's a couple of election observers who think actually Michigan may be the real key state. But what do you make of the Pennsylvania situation right now?
So, I've actually got a really good friend on the ground in Pennsylvania that's in charge of the Pennsylvania Chase. His name's Cliff Maloney. And his team's out there and making sure that ballots are getting turned in early for Republican voters because that's how we lost in 2020.
Yeah.
And he told me 6 months ago, he sat down and he was like, Christian, if we get 33% of all ballots returned as a two-party breakdown in Pennsylvania, we win this thing. And I actually just pulled the numbers for him literally like a few hours ago. And as of this morning in Pennsylvania, the breakdown right now for early votes is sitting at 32.74% for Republicans. And then the remainder are going to Democrats, right? So we're on the edge of getting to the point where exactly the cutoff that he told me that we need to be in order to actually flip this state. So I think the early vote numbers in Pennsylvania are really positive for us. And again, if we win Pennsylvania, we're almost certainly winning the White House.
I feel like I saw somewhere that there's also like some really set in cultural feelings about voting on Election Day among Republicans in Pennsylvania. Is that true? Are we still expecting a lion's share of Republican votes on Election Day itself?
Yes, Republicans are going to win Election Day in Pennsylvania. They traditionally always vote on Election Day. and which is why early voting is so important for us, because we know that a huge chunk of our base are going to show up on election day, but we really need to be getting those low propensity voters, these newly registered voters, the ones that you were just talking about a few minutes ago in Northern Virginia that are voting Republican. We're trying to get those people to vote early because there's no guarantee that they're going to show up on election day. So any gains we make in early voting is just going to, it's going to go miles towards us getting across the finish line on election day.
And I do have to say, I try to be as objective as possible as I say the following thing. I do think that all of the energy that I can sense is with Trump, and and on the other side, Kamala Harris's campaign, I don't even really know what her candidacy is about, and I don't think voters know. And I wonder to what extent that you won't have vote switchers, but just people who would normally vote for Democrats who say, I'm sitting out this election because why bother?
Well, I mean, Democrats already know that this is a huge problem, right? Like, there's a reason that figures like Barack Obama are going to Philadelphia, and they're giving these almost like HR style lectures to their own base voters, being like, you need to show up. It's your responsibility to get Harris across the finish line, and I'm disappointed in you. And it's like they're browbeating their own side because they realize that there's just not a lot of energy there. I agree with you that, like, I don't even think Democrats know what Kamala Harris's campaign's about, let alone anybody else in the country. And that enthusiasm gap is where you're really going to see the difference being made in a state like Pennsylvania that quite literally could come down to just a few thousand votes.
Christian Heiens, finally, early voting is coming online in a bunch of states across the country. And I'm seeing headlines frequently over the last few days that they all consist of record turnout. Record turnout in Georgia, where, by the way, the voter integrity laws are working perfectly and people are showing up to vote in that system. A record turnout in North Carolina, record turnout in Clark County, Nevada, record turnouts in Virginia. Do you think this trend continues?
Yeah, I mean, what I think is ultimately happening is all the data that you and I have talked about twice now about Virginia, it's not being confined to Virginia. It's spilling over into Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Nevada, and they're all pointing in the same direction. John Ralston, who's a political analyst in Nevada, he's left-wing. He's definitely a Democrat hack, but he knows his numbers. Yeah. He is sounding the alarm bells right now because he's telling people there is no Democrat firewall right now. And this time 4 years ago, it was something like 30 to 40,000 votes the Democrats had banked more than Republicans. And right now there's almost nothing there for them. And so he's sounding the alarm bells. You've got the same thing in North Carolina, where Western North Carolina is turning out heavily for Republicans. And this is right after the hurricane that just plowed through there. And you've got the same thing in Georgia, where turnout is breaking record numbers right now in early voting. And it's mostly coming from these Republican counties in the northern part of the state. So again, it's not a trend that's confined to Virginia, and that's why I said the numbers in Virginia matter. Not because I think Trump is guaranteed to win the state or even likely to, yes, but because if Virginia sees a huge swing, it's not going to be confined to the Commonwealth. It's going to take place in all the other swing states in the country.
And this is why Kamala Harris's campaign feels so chaotic right now, and why they're keeping Joe Biden as far away as possible. Hey, Christian Heiens, thank you very much. I really appreciate your time. The Making the Argument podcast is where you can hear more from Christian. Thank you, sir. You know, President Trump was at the Steelers game yesterday, of course, Pittsburgh, campaigning in Pennsylvania. Here's how NBC acknowledged him for like a burp of a second.
45th President of the United States, Donald Trump, in attendance tonight, invited guest of one of the suite holders here at Acrisure Stadium in Pittsburgh. Jets on top 7-3.
And then they cut away. They show you Taylor Swift 50 times a game. They show you President Trump. For, what was that? In total, that was 13 seconds of audio I shared with you. Most of it was either silence or referring to the on-the-field action. Let's see. But this is what it actually sounded like inside of the stadium as people were chanting. President Trump, thumbs up, waving to everybody, seeing the crowd. So the crowd enjoyed President Trump there. Pittsburgh, a big city, a big deal, and a big state. Let me see. I've got Steve calling in from Glendale now, line 5. Hello, Steve. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, good evening, Vince. Thanks for taking my call. And I love seeing Donald Trump at McDonald's as a longtime stockholder in the company. And I'd love to see him name that new chicken Big Mac after him, call it the Big Daddy Trump, and let's see if we can get some business in there.
Yeah, why not? They put all these other celebrities up on the drive-through board, don't they, Steve?
And, that'll be good for sales. But what a positive message, because all the rhetoric about Donald Trump being a convicted felon and he went to work for McDonald's. That's a great reentry job from some of these folks that need a fresh start. And, Donald Trump, in business, I hired many people who had done a little bit of time and turned himself around. You got to give people another chance, but make that a positive.
Of course.
And certainly working at McDonald's as your first job, you're joining people like Jeff Bezos and all kinds of positive execs that have run many successful companies.
Well, I'll tell you what, Steve did his research before he invested in McDonald's. Thank you, Steve. I appreciate the call on that. He's right. They should name a sandwich after Trump. That won't be divisive or anything. The great one, Mark Levin, up next here on WMAL.